only been able to attend Tuesday so far this week, but I keep getting updates from Andrea, and it's just been amazing. I know my day on Tuesday, the things that I learned were incredible, and I think I've been talking so much about it ever since then. So really good to see everybody joining in again. And today we're looking at innovation in healthcare. Because to become truly sustainable, we really do have to rely heavily on innovation. It's not been done before, but our NHS is world leading in this space, and it's really good to be there. And we need to be embracing it. And absolutely, we need to celebrate innovation, not just know that it's happening. We have to shine a light on it, get that marvelousness recognised, and really celebrate everything that's going on. And I'm learning new stuff all the time here. So the NHS and the Small Business Research Initiative have teamed together a number of times to invest in innovation. There was a competition last year and have been focusing on reducing emissions from high emitting areas such as theatres, using digital innovations. A lot of work going on with researchers and universities to really get bright young minds to think about solutions. And I think that's one of the most exciting things at the moment. This is everywhere around us. It's not something that's new now. So much of the time we're looking to see what can we do better? How can we really make a difference in the green space out there? So today we've got some, again, fabulous speakers. We've got Susie coming along to talk to us about Pie and Porridge Project. It's making my tummy rumble. We've got Pete, who's going to talk about net zero innovation, helping with pathways of care, and particularly around wound care. And then we have Tammy coming along to talk through social prescribing programme. Fabulous, really, really good topics. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the marvellous Susie. Come on in, Susie, we can't wait to hear.
Thank you. Don't know that I deserve such fanfare. So, Kate, are you going to do the slides for me? Thank you. So my name's Susie Moody. I work at Southampton Hospital, and that's where I've done the Pie and Porridge project. Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge up front that this was done as part of my Florence Nightingale Foundation programme, and it couldn't have happened at all without some really lovely collaboration with our catering contractors, Serco. This is definitely me being the mouthpiece for a project that was co-created and really an ongoing collaboration. So next slide, please. So the project itself started, as they all do, quite small, with the aim of quantifying ward level food waste in our acute hospital trust. So looking at how much food was being wasted, plate waste and trolley waste. So the difference is basically plate waste is food that's gone to the patient that didn't get eaten, and trolley waste is food that went up to the ward but that never got served and is left on the trolley at the end of service. And we wanted to find out, normally those two are put together and disposed of, and we wanted to find out which was the bigger contributor. So it was quantifying that. I wanted right from the start to do some qualitative work as well. So not just documenting what was happening, but saying, well, what's driving that? Why is it happening? So that qualitative work around understanding the drivers of food waste, again, at ward level. And the project expanded a little bit because I got access to some data sets and things that I wasn't expecting to. So I was able to look at food choices, what the patients were actually ordering each day, and spending time on the wards during food service made me actually want to think about packaging waste as well. I'll come on to that. Next slide, please. So the initial plan was to have a weighing week, which involved 10 different wards. They were all adult wards, just to make it a little bit simpler, but they encompass both surgery and medicine, a whole range of different age groups of adults, lots of different specialities. Unfortunately, they were over 2 different wings of the hospital, so I got my step count went up that week quite significantly. But for 5 days, we separated the plate and trolley waste and we weighed it at breakfast time and at lunchtime. The short version is that although it varies across different wards, and it varied day to day, what you're looking at is the average. Plate waste is generally higher than trolley waste. So this is food that's going to the patient and then being wasted, was driving more of the waste. And I'm not very good at thinking about things in kilos. So I like to compare them to animals and other random things. So our breakfast weight, if we extrapolate from the 10 wards up to 50, just over 50 wards that we have at UHS, our breakfast waste is the equivalent of a female warthog. And lunchtime waste was even higher. It was the equivalent of a grizzly bear every day. So something definitely needed to change. Next slide, please. I used the patient ordering data to say, well, okay, what are patients eating? What actually is the most common lunch? And we're still very British in Southampton. We like meat, potatoes and vegetables. The most common thing that we order is beef, potato and root vegetables. So I did a bit of a calculation to work out the carbon dioxide equivalent emissions around that. And beef, I don't know if you're aware, is actually the food that we eat that has the highest carbon footprint of anything that we eat. And because that is such a popular menu choice, that's really driving our carbon emissions associated with our food. So one meal produces approximately 13.5 kilos of carbon dioxide equivalent. Next slide, please. Which is all very well, but I wanted to know about what was wasted of that. So that's just the food that we are delivering. But if you look at the pie chart on the left, pie chart's chosen deliberately, obviously, Pie and Porridge Project. The pie chart on the left-hand side is what the average order was across a ward. And as you can see, beef actually makes up just over a quarter of the meals that were being ordered. But the carbon dioxide footprint associated with lunchtime is higher because obviously that beef has that higher footprint than the other food that's on offer. Across the hospital, as I said, we waste about 125 kilos of food every lunchtime, which has a carbon footprint of just over a tonne every day. That's the food waste. It's not the food that we're using. It's just the waste is a carbon equivalent tonne. Now, I'm a nurse and I really struggled with the idea of what is a tonne of carbon? What does that look like? So I Googled it to find out what it was equivalent to that might make a bit more sense to me and also to people that I wanted to talk to about food waste, because it needs to be relatable. That's about 2,500 miles driving a normal car, or 120,000 smartphone charges every lunchtime. Which, if that doesn't make your jaw drop, I don't know what would. So something definitely needed to change. Next slide, please. I really wanted to dig into what was going on. And one of the really nice things was that because we have a patient food survey that we do, and we review it every month, that data meant that I could look and say, well, is it that our food's a bit rubbish? Do people not like it? Hospital food's got a terrible reputation. And actually, it's not the case. The vast majority of our patients say that their dietary needs are catered for. We have 19 different menus. So this is something that we've worked really hard on as a trust. People say, actually, no, you do cater for my needs. And not only that, but over 95% of our patients say that the food was acceptable, good, or very good. So it's not that they don't like it. And I also looked at whether it was served hot, whether it was presented nicely, and all of those things said, actually, there is nothing wrong with our Serco catering. This is good quality food and the patients like it. So why is it being wasted? I went out wider than the 10 wards and went across a lot more of the hospital, talking to our ward hosts who are Serco staff, so they're not trust staff, but they are the ones who take the orders, and they're also the ones who serve meals and clear the waste away. So they're the ones with the patient contact. And I was saying to them, well, what do you think of the waste? Do you think that it could be better? What do you think are driving these things? Really open questions. And the thing that was mentioned more than anything else was portion size. whether that was the portion size actually delivered to the patient. And obviously we have quite a lot of people in the hospital who are older, who are feeling poorly and who aren't very mobile. So giving them an enormous plate of food is not surprising that it's wasted. Any of us that have been clinical recently know that there's a lot of food waste, particularly when delivering food to small elderly people. So portion size was something that came up very strongly, but also our multi-portions. So if you have one patient on a ward who orders an apple crumble, the multi-portion pack is sent up. So the portions that aren't ordered get wasted. So this is a balance in portion size between the patient waste and the trolley waste. And then this phrase was given to me by one of the clinicians: nobody ever eats an orange. And that kind of haunted me. If you put the next slide up, please. I think it's really important that when we talk about anything to do with sustainability, that we don't focus on carbon. And the orange, I'm going to use an example. So we were serving navel oranges, which if you don't have a sharp knife, a navel orange is almost impossible to eat. You can try it at home if you want to, but it does have quite a high carbon footprint. So don't everybody try it. 1 kilo of oranges has a carbon equivalent footprint of just under a kilo. Okay, but what about the wider environmental impact? Oranges, like most of our fruit and veg, are grown in monoculture, which means that that's the only thing in the field. And that has a really negative impact on our soil health. It reduces below ground biodiversity, and it also has an impact on the biodiversity of the surrounding ecosystem. You're also more inclined to use pesticides because monoculture means that your crops are more likely to have pest trouble. So you're looking at increased pesticide use, which causes water pollution. Many of our crops need watering, which has an impact on our water cycle, but also on groundwater availability in the local area. We've got the transport costs. Boat travel has a reduced carbon footprint compared with air travel, but boat travel is really polluting. The marine industry is incredibly highly polluting, which if we just look at carbon footprint, that is lost. Then you've also got the packaging, so plastic, cardboard, doesn't matter which, both have an environmental impact. And then that orange gets put on the ward and it doesn't get eaten. All of that environmental impact for something that goes in the bin. So we'll come back to the oranges in a minute. Next slide, please. Something that I thought was really positive that came out of this is that when I was looking at the food survey from the patients, we only have about 3.5% of our patients say that they're vegan or vegetarian. But actually, over a third of our patients, as you can see in the bar chart at the bottom, over a third of the patients choose vegetarian meals. And I was like, actually, this is a real opportunity, because obviously, anytime you're talking about food in hospital or menu changes or what you offer to patients, you have to be so careful that you're not limiting someone from eating what's going to make them better and go home, because ultimately we don't want them staying in hospital because that's got a really bad environmental footprint. So it's got to be really well balanced. And this really gave me some hope that actually we could do some menu changes, look at reducing meat consumption and promoting our plant-based menu to improve our sustainability. I'll come back to that one as well. Next slide, please. So to get all of this data, I spent quite a lot of time running around the wards, as you can imagine. And the thing that was never part of the original project, but that really hit me, was the packaging. So one meal time across 9 wards, I calculated 60 plastic meal containers, about 130 foil containers. And in addition to that, we also have 3 4-pint milk bottles that go to every ward across the hospital every day. Next slide, please. And when I started the project, none of it was being recycled at all. So we had over 8 tons of waste going in black bin bags, which you could either send to landfill or incineration, but both of those generate air, water and soil pollution. And all of it is potentially recyclable. It isn't straightforward, which I'm happy to pick up in the questions at the end. But the short story is we produce a lot of waste and we could do something different. Next slide, please. So the really amazing part of this for me was getting to present all of the data. So I am a band 5 nurse, and this is not part of my original job description. This is something that's happened because of the FNF scholarship. But I had the opportunity to take this to the line management within my own department, but also back to our catering contractor, Serco, with that triple bottom line. We can do better for our patients, we can do better for the planet, and it will be better for the pocket as well. We can definitely do more. And I took these recommendations to them, and I have to say, I couldn't fault the response. They have been fantastic in initiating change so quickly and being so keen to look wider and do more. So the changes that they've delivered so far already are the oranges. They no longer come up to the fruit bowl to rot. They are now easy peelers, and they are ordered by the patient rather than for the ward fruit bowl. So that saved nearly 45 kilos of carbon every week. And I'm sure the reduction in waste will help our biodiversity where we're growing them as well. Milk bottles were recycled. As soon as I mentioned it, we were like, absolutely, we can do that. That's 1.7 tons of high density polyethylene now not going in black bin bags. And there are moves to implement wider recycling of the food packaging as well, which should come online in the next financial year. One of my favourite things that we've implemented are the mini meals. So we have a menu review twice a year. So this will come in spring. They're already being offered to some patients, but we have mini meals. So this is with the dietetics team, making sure that these are really energy dense, that we're not compromising any patient nutrition or anything else, but they're designed for the little appetite. And they all have vegetarian mini meal options as well. We've reduced the amount of beef, sometimes replacing it with pork, which has a 10 times lower carbon footprint, and sometimes replacing those with vegetarian options. And such a simple thing, we've changed the menu. So rather than having cottage pie at the top, it's now at the bottom, because according to my lovely dietitian at Serco, patients choose the things that are closer to the top. So why don't we put the things that are vegetarian or plant-based at the top? Very simple. We'll see what happens in the spring menu. Last slide, please. So I was asked to do 3 bullet points at the end, which I have to admit probably took me longer than the rest of the project to come up with. But I would just say, I think there's a tendency across the whole of NHS, maybe across the whole of life, to do things the way that we do them because we've always done them like that. Challenge it. Challenge waste. We don't have to stay the same. Just because patients don't eat hospital food doesn't mean that we can't tempt them to reduce waste. Make sure the plans are feasible. Happy to go more into that in the question time. I didn't have time to go into it in the main thing. And also have that long-term plan of monitoring progress. We now have quarterly meetings with our Serco contractors to get together as a group of people who just want to go, great, how's it going? Are there any barriers? And what else? We've done the easy stuff. Now let's tackle the big stuff. Let's keep going, keep pushing, and maybe drive change a bit more. And don't be afraid to begin alone. If we wait for somebody else to agree with us, we will just sit on a mountain of waste. But it's amazing when you actually start talking about challenging the waste and doing something about it. I have had most people turn around and say, oh, I'm so glad somebody's doing something about that. It's really about time somebody did. Great, go for it. That's all from me. Thank you.
Oh, well, you can see all of, and if I was any good with this, I'm just going to clap on the screen because I'll make a mess of this if I try and find my clapping thing. But that I think was just incredible. I'm laughing here because as you're looking, I could see Tammy at one point. Tammy, you were looking like, oh, the same as me, and I could also see Mary. There was a bit of a gasp when you were showing the difference. I love the fact, and I think this is what's come through this week, linking it to things that actually mean something to us. So linking things to, this is the equivalent of a bear. This is the equivalent of a warthog. Although I'm not sure. I think I might not be the only person who started thinking about the Lion King. I think I was singing along at that point, thinking about that warthog, but never mind. I think that is so key. And as we're trying to get this message across, it is making it relevant. Couple of big points before we move on. I think we're going to have questions right at the end for all of them. Don't just focus on the carbon footprint. That was a really good message as well. There is a lot of other things to take into account here. And I think one of the key things here is better for patient, better for planet, better for pocket. That is a fantastic strapline. I can tell you now, Susie, you're probably going to get sick of me because I'm already working out how we can get you to talk to some more people across the wider network as well, because this is absolutely fantastic. Flipping how you do the menus, marvellous, really good idea. So many of us, you do end up just choosing the same things that you do see. Fabulous presentation. Really, really good to see about the Florence Nightingale work. I think that that's superb. Well done. Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a fantastic start. So we're going to move on now to Pete, who's going to talk about the pathways of care, reducing the carbon footprint of a wound care pathway. Pete, are you here?
I am indeed. Kate, do you mind if
marvellous.
Thank
Come
you.
on down.
Thank you. Kate, do you mind if I share my screen? Because I made a slight little tweak. Do you mind if I be in control of my own slides? Because I like to sort of whip through them quickly. And I hate following brilliant presentations. You know, what a sort of act to follow, but brilliant, Susie. Really, really inspiring, and hopefully I can bring to life some work that we're doing that might be of interest to you and of similar messages that you've mentioned. So, just while my screen is sharing, I'm Pete Waddingham. I'm the Health Innovation National Net Zero Lead. I was just looking at that resource that you mentioned, actually, the food one. I'm going to add it. But that's who I am. Yeah, I'm the National Net Zero Lead for the Health Innovation Network. Just in terms of what I'm going to do today, I will keep it short and sweet. I'll rattle through these slides fairly quickly, but I just want to briefly tell you who we are, because you might not have ever heard about us. I'll just give you a couple of examples of innovation themes and some examples, talk a bit about resources. I want to bring to life some work that I've just sort of finished on the National Wound Care Strategy. I'm just in the final stages of tidying it up, but there's a bit of quantification there. And this was the thing that I just squeezed in at the 11th hour. There's some work happening on nitrous oxide that I wanted to see if I can do a bit of a call to action. And then finally, I was just going to finish with what would I do if I was you? So it says, there we go. Just in terms of who we are, if you've not heard of the Health Innovation Network, there are 15 health innovation networks up and down England. We all are geographically tied to our local areas. I work at a national level. I previously worked for the Yorkshire and Humber organisation. So our job is to try and spread innovation at pace and scale, hopefully improving health and generating economic growth. We're involved in lots of areas, from respiratory, cardiovascular disease, cancer, patient meds, patient safety, and obviously net zero is one of our areas as well. It's a very good cross-cutting theme. I suppose I was going to throw this in the mix as well quickly, because I know sometimes when we talk about innovation, there's a bit of a kind of what does it mean? But I was looking at a few things. I just looked at this one yesterday, actually. But, you know, something that executing an idea which addresses a specific challenge and achieves value for both the company and customer. You can see that that was a non-NHS health focused definition. But actually, I think rather than customer, we can say that achieves value for patient and planet, as you've said, Kay. You know, we want things that are good for our pockets, good for the planet, good for patients, etc. And I think we can achieve that. And that, for me, is good innovation. And actually, you see other sort of definitions where you kind of have adaptive innovation, improving what you've already got, and then right through to transformative innovation. And sometimes people often think about innovation in that sense, you know, the real kind of disruptive, but actually you can see there that it's across the spectrum. And I like that. I think, you know, quality improvement is innovation, certainly when we get involved in tweaking and changing things. So just a little bit of context about who we are. In terms of my role, I support a lot of innovators that come through our door. It's a bit of a bland spreadsheet, this one, but in the last year, I've spoke to well over 150 innovators, and you can see there I've got them kind of pigeonholed next to different themes. They're the themes that the Greener NHS talk about. So there's a lot of innovation in estates and facilities, lots of digital innovation, things on workforce, things on meds, etc. My job is to keep finding innovation, trying to get some of this tested, and hopefully some of the stuff that we've got, find out if it's of value. So I'm just going to bring to life a few of the companies. Now, obviously, when I was thinking about today's call, I know that nursing and midwifery cover so many sort of areas and pathways that, you know, I found it a little bit hard to think about what should I showcase. So this is a bit of a random selection. It's by no means everything, but I just thought I'd sort of whet your appetite. But we have companies coming to us that have got kind of a medical device to clear the airways. Again, they've done a lot of work on sustainability, and maybe current pathways of care are as sustainable and as useful as these products. So a company called Airway Medical have certainly sort of still quite early stage, you know, wanting to get their med tech tested and utilised in the NHS, but a useful product. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to move on. There we go. Another company that I've known of actually for a long while. This is one of a couple of companies I'm just going to show you that are looking to reduce plastic in surgical settings. So actually, there's a lot of work that's happening to say, look, in surgery, we're using so many instruments. Sometimes those instruments aren't even used in the surgical setting. And I'll show you a report at the end of this that we've done recently. But actually, if we are going to use an instrument, how can we make as much of it reusable and less about plastic as possible? So, I think it's brilliant that we've got companies like Elemental Healthcare that are starting to look at some key surgical equipment and just think about every little bit of carbon footprint that we can save off a product. Every little helps, to coin a phrase. Similar company, Vanguard Medical, again, they remanufacture and reprocess medical equipment. So they'll take equipment, they'll take it to the factory, they'll clean it up, they'll stamp it again, it's as good as new. There are actually financial savings to the hospital because they'll buy the equipment off the hospital in the first place, and actually then you get the equipment cheaper. And again, there is a bit of a carbon reduction element to that. It's maybe not as big as maybe people hope for, but there's certainly a carbon impact and definitely kind of financial benefit and just a real nice way of thinking about a more circular economy of doing things. A lot of that surgical equipment will just end up in incineration then. So I've known Vanguard for a long while. They tried to come and get our help in the midst of COVID, which wasn't the greatest time, but actually now COVID's kind of passed in terms of the real sort of serious side of things. They're really making good traction, and I've got a lot of time for Vanguard. Another company here, and do you know what? I've forgotten the name of the company. I can only see the logo now. I'm going to call it Surgical Pouch because that's in the SP, but I don't think that's their name. But actually, it's another surgical tray that looks, as you can see there, to eliminate waste, be a bit more sustainable in how that surgical equipment is utilised and how it's clean and decontaminated. So there are a few in that field. Just moving on a little bit. I put this one in. This is a digital platform. In a previous role, I was helping Healthy.io roll out their smartphone software that helps scan urine to tell people if they've got an abnormal ACR levels, which is a precursor to chronic kidney disease. And actually, they've got an app for wound care. The reason I thought I'd showcase this is that on the ground, some of my colleagues have been working with nurses on wound care, and they've said, look, there's so much time and wasted effort with what we're doing on the ground that we could really do with a digital platform to help us become more efficient and effective. So actually, there's companies out there that are not net zero innovation, but actually can help with some of the challenges we've got. So, I would always encourage people to think about digital. This is another example as well. It's a lone worker platform. We've got a lot of companies wanting to test some of these products, and this is one of them. And actually, they've done a really good piece of work to look at the carbon impact of using that system to track where people are going and the carbon impact of their travel. So again, just another example of something that's not necessarily net zero, but they've started doing a lot of thinking about the net zero benefit and are really looking for people to kind of test and try with. Euphony, I've known them for a long while. Again, they've done some thinking on net zero, but how can we help make healthcare efficient and effective? So that uses autonomous AI and to speak to patients, to book things in, to make sure that they're only getting followed up when they need to, and some information is getting collected. And there's a lot of evidence actually that we're wasting a lot of time and resources and travel from bringing people into hospital settings when they don't need to be, or not just hospital settings, clinical settings, GP settings, community settings. So, it really excites me, the world of AI and some of these kind of digital platforms where they can help. Then we go kind of back to the real kind of sort of other net zero innovations. Again, these are early stage, but brilliant company that are using seaweed to start being an alternative to plastic. You can see there they've got an inhaler case. They're just looking at some other testing, like COVID tests as well. So how can we, not use plastic? How can we move away from plastic and use more sustainable materials? So a bit early stage, but some work of theirs is due out imminently. They were successful in that SBRI funding that Kay alluded to at the beginning. So just a really good example of a company that we've been working with, who've secured some funding, hopefully going to help change some medtech products that that we all consume in healthcare. Another one, wood safe, sharps bin made of byproducts of wood. You can see there they've got some reduction on their emissions. So there's a lot of these products that exist already that we just need people to help kind of get them into our procurement catalogues, start utilising them, think differently about how we use like plastic sharp bins that end up going into incineration. So how can we use byproducts from the wood industry, create another product, has less of a carbon footprint. And this one I'm just going to throw in as well. It's a different way of kind of cleaning things down, a chemical solution, a lot less packaging, a lot less logistics as well, a very small little solution. But again, how can we keep showing, a bit like Susie showed, things are getting, logistics are traveling, all over the country. And actually, how can we reduce those logistics, those packaging, so that we can reduce our carbon footprint? A company that I know really well, Revolution Zero, you might have heard of them. They do a lot of work on reusable PPE, have decontamination units that they've cleared, but are doing a brilliant piece of work on circular economy and PPE. We know that PPE is vitally important for everything that you do on the front line. How can we make it more sustainable? The textiles that we make it from, how it's washed and processed. Brilliant company. I think this is my last one just in terms of innovators, but this one is a company that are working with Health Innovation East, and basically it goes in the fridge, and if there's a breach, as in the electricity goes off, it keeps the vaccines and the medicines cool, because if there is a breach, as it says at the top there's a lot of waste that goes in. These medicines will end up going in the bin. And if we think about it, with climate change, actually, we're probably going to get more extreme weather, and therefore probably things like energy disruptions and energy going off and power cuts. So, innovation like this is multifaceted and has a carbon benefit, and probably links to things like climate adaptation. Sorry, this was the last one, but as well, we've got other innovators that are looking at how can they do on-site processing of waste. So when we do generate waste, how can we think about waste more as an asset and process it on waste to at least get some benefit? Because as I said, we live in this world that's very kind of linear. We use something once, we throw it away, it gets burnt. How can we kind of make waste be more of an asset? These are the two reports that I just wanted to briefly touch on that the Health Innovation Network have commissioned and been commissioned to deliver in the past. One's on surgical tray rationalisation, one's on the use of surgical gowns. I think why I wanted to bring these to life is, sometimes in the organisations that you work for, you just might need a little bit of guidance, a report, some facts and figures to help you convince other people in your organisation that this is the right thing to do. And so there's lots of information that's gone on. National Wound Care Programme, I've been involved in that. Again, what we're trying to do is get wounds healed quickly, and I've done some carbon quantification of that. Now, this is kind of hot off the press, and I just need to do some final confirmation. But actually, we can see that a healed wound is a lot less carbon intensive than an unhealed wound. And a bit like Susie's done, I've started turning that into things like how many car miles is that? So actually, good optimal care is 50% less carbon intensive than suboptimal care, which equates to nearly 1 million kilograms of CO2, which is nearly 3 million car miles driven, which is about 450 or over 450 cars driven in a year on UK roads. And what I've also worked out is if we got all those that are on suboptimal care at the moment on good practice, good optimal care, what would the net zero benefit be of that? And I think the take-home message really is good patient care is good for the planet. And I think the more that we can keep showing that in numbers, the more hopefully it inspires people to want to implement that best practice. There's lots of resources that I'm involved in. This is bookmark bar. I'll put it in the chat after this presentation, but I stumble across a lot of things. I've got nearly 800 things on there. Just had a quick look, actually. There's loads of tags and things that you can find. I just had a quick look on nursing. Nursing's a little bit light. I've only kind of got 6 things, but it doesn't mean that all them other resources are of relevance to nursing. But in terms of nursing, I probably I would love to find kind of more assets. But I saw this from Claire Nash as well, and people probably know Claire Nash. She's brilliant. Develops like a little decision support tool, which I thought was really helpful, actually, just for you on the ground to kind of go through and sort of think, what is this product that we're using? What's its impact? So the idea behind that decision support tool is really to make things simple for you on the ground. So I like that resource. We're just launching an nitrous oxide and Entonox waste mitigation toolkit. So UCL partners have been commissioned to develop that. I won't go into all this because I'm just conscious of time, but we know that it's bad for the planet. But what I really need is actually some focus groups, and they are bringing some together. So if I put my details in the chat, if you're interested in being involved in that, would you drop me a message and I'll hook you up with the people that are doing that work? So they really could do with some clinical impact on the ground and feedback on the ground, if that's okay. So I'll share these slides. You can have a look at your own leisure. But yeah, I'd love to see if I can get some of your support just to provide some feedback. So what would I do if I was you? I mean, Susie's touched on this as well a bit and done a great piece of work, but I think first thing, I'd just be observing what's happening in your clinical practice. Is there a lot that you're using? Is there a lot of travel? What are the pressures? And actually then start thinking about measurement. What do you already measure is what I'm keen on. That wound care work that I showed you, I tried to use what they were already measuring because I know it's hard on the ground. You know, you don't want to start measuring other things. I know, Susie, you look like you have collated other data, which is brilliant. But, you know, think about what you could measure easily and then look at that data and highlight hotspots, exactly as Susie's alluded to as well, and seek some support. You know, I'm certainly here to help guide people as well. It's not easy as carbon accounting, but, you know, don't worry much about the carbon accounting. Just think about the things that you're in control of that you can measure. Obviously network with people like you're doing today and ask questions and just be really open with the challenges that you face. You know, it's great to hear the problems that you've got because then we can hopefully pair you up with innovation. There's lots of funding out there actually. And again, Kay, you mentioned it, but one of the things that I've talked about this morning, there's a lot of research funding out there, but we're just not securing it for the NHS. So we need to get a lot smarter at that. And again, one of the things that I do is find that funding, but we really need people on the ground to think about how can we get some of this funding into the NHS to get answering the questions of the things that matter most. Testing and trialing, you know, obviously we need to test things, but really the last message is, you know, please come and network with us. Meet some of our innovators, hear about the work. You know, you're not obliged to buy anything. It might not be right for you. But actually just come and listen to some of the things that they're offering. And some of them want to just trial some things for free. I've put one in the chat, Zedible, which was a food-based innovation system, but there's lots of them that just need sometimes a little bit of time. So I'll stop there and hopefully that was of use.
That was fantastic as well. Blimey, so much information. I couldn't keep up. There's smoke coming off my pen here. But I think what's fascinating, the message that's coming through again, and I hadn't thought about good wound care and the impact that that has. But again, it's that message that actually good patient care is good for the planet. And I think that's possibly one of the ways that we can get round this as well. This isn't just an add-on. This is absolutely essential, and it is going to make a big difference. So many things. I won't talk long because I know we've got our next fabulous speaker, but the nitrous oxide, being a midwife, chief midwife, this is a biggie for us. Poor Charlotte Charlotte Easton is in my line of fire, and she'll be thinking, oh Lord, I know what's going to happen here. This is going to be Kay roping me in. But I know we will have midwives out there who want to be involved in that. And that's going to be fab, Pete. So we'll make sure we do the connecting. And then we'll open up for questions at the end. But superb. Thank you very, very much. And then we're going to go on to our last presenter today, our marvellous Tammy, who's been sitting right in front of me all the way through this. Tammy's going to talk to us about social prescribing programme. All over to you now, Tammy. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Hi, so I'm Tammy and I am a community mental health nurse. I work at the East Assessment and Treatment Service in Brighton, which is a community mental health team for working age adults. Next slide, please. So I'm talking today about a group that I've run for clients, a nature connection group. So first of all, thinking about why I decided to run a nature connection group. So in 2021, I organised a team day for my colleagues, and it was at the local, I organised it at the local community garden. And that was the first time the whole team had been together since the COVID lockdown started over a year earlier. And during that team day, I saw the power of being in nature with my colleagues. And how it increased their well-being, but the almost magical power of kind of the connection both with each other and with nature. And it's something I'd always been interested in. I'm also outside of work involved with woodcraft folk. So doing outdoor activities is something I've been doing for a long time. But then seeing the effect that this team day in the community garden had on my colleagues, I decided I wanted to bring that to my clients as well. I found some training, some nature-based practice training that I went on. I was fortunate that my trust paid for me to do that training. And And then, yeah, started to get an idea together to run a group. So a growing body of research has shown that being in nature, in green spaces and being outdoors is beneficial to our mental well-being. And the idea of the group was for participants to connect both with nature and with each other, with a view that they would continue to engage in some nature-based activities after the group. Next slide, please. And just some quotes here from some different organisations about the therapeutic effect of being in nature. So from Mind, spending time in green space or bringing nature into your everyday life can benefit both your mental and physical well-being. From the Wildlife Trust, evidence shows that a thriving wildlife-rich environment benefits both physical and mental health. Nature programs have also been found to save the NHS money and cut reliance on their resources. And from the Mental Health Foundation, evidence shows us that the quality of our relationship with nature is part of the reason for its positive impact on our well-being. And researchers use the term connectedness to describe this ideal relationship. Next slide, please. So the group, we held it at Bevindine Community Garden. And this site was chosen because it has a garden area, it has a fire pit area, it has a pond, and it's in between woodland and the downs. So it's a very, very beautiful, peaceful, relaxing environment, but it's also on the bus route from the city centre. So getting there is easy on public transport and reducing the carbon footprint of both facilitators and clients getting there. So it was 6 sessions weekly for 6 weeks. And we asked our colleagues within the assessment and treatment service for referrals. We were asking particularly for people who are isolated, excuse me, or have sensory issues. We also asked that any clients who engage in self-harm are able to manage that so that they could keep themselves safe during the group, where we'd have access to things like fire and tools. Next slide, please. So each session started with a cup of tea around the fire. We got the fire going before the clients turned up, got the kettle on, and started the group with a cup of tea and a chat around the fire. Then we did a mindfulness or a grounding practice, followed by then the main activity of the week. Next slide, please. So the 6 main activities that we did, in the first week we did a boundary walk and a bit of planting some seeds. We had a bed that was just for our use during the group. And the boundary walk was just getting everyone familiar with the site. The second week we made wildflower seed bombs, and then clients were able to take those home and put them either in their garden or in an area local to them. In the third week we used eye loops, which are little jeweler's tools, so that we could really get a different perspective on the garden and the things within the garden, and also did some art and some haiku writing. In the fourth week, we looked at using different senses in the garden, and we did an exercise looking at the 5 different senses and how thinking about what things can stimulate the senses and what things can relax them. Fifth week, we made bug hotels. We made small individual ones that clients could take home, as well as doing some work on an existing bug hotel that was in the garden. And on week 6, we went for a walk, a short walk up to the downs, up to this pond that's in the picture, and then did an evaluation when we returned by the fire. Next slide, please. Sorry about my cough. So some issues. We had one participant in the group who was having seizures at the group, but we were able to put in extra support for her so that she was able to continue to attend the group safely. We had another participant who had some mobility issues and walked with a stick. So we were able to support him with his mobility, and things like for some of the activities in the garden, we would bring the materials to him rather than him having to go around the garden to get the materials. When we went on the walk at the final session, we all walked at his pace. Another participant had their arm in a sling, so again we had to make some adaptations so that they could also take part in all the activities. Next slide, please. So in the final session, we did a evaluation form as well, which 4 of the participants completed, and they basically all rated the activities as good or excellent, said that the group had increased their confidence around other people. The useful aspects of the group were the peaceful setting, the craft activities, connecting to others in the group, the mindfulness exercises, the woods, making new friends, the surroundings, the facilitators' encouragement. They said they'd missed the course and would have liked it to be longer and would return again if offered. The only improvements they could suggest would be to repair the broken toilet step and the table, which were things I was then able to discuss with the Community Garden Committee. Next slide, please. So a couple of quotes here from some of the participants at the group. I've thoroughly enjoyed the course. After a nervous start about interacting with new people, I feel more confident about meeting new people in a group setting. Being in such a great spot surrounded by trees and the allotment has been really calming. Sitting by the fire is relaxing, and the group has been uplifting and a great start to the week. The group leaders were great, caring and making sure everyone was okay. Next slide, please. One participant said they now felt motivated to attend other groups. Several participants swapped numbers and planned to keep in touch, and they all said they would continue to engage in nature in some way and were given information on other nature-based services they may wish to participate in. Next slide, please. So the next steps, I wasn't successful in securing funding to run the group again, unfortunately. However, myself and my colleagues held a bake sale to raise the money to run it again, and we raised almost twice the target amount, meaning that we can actually run the group again twice this year. We're planning to start one in May and another one in September. To complete outcome measures before and after the group, which we didn't do this time, but we realised after we'd started it would have been helpful to help us assess the impact on mental health. To open up referrals to a neighbouring team, to offer the group to a wider range of people, and to considering running a group with different content so that those who've already done the group can come back, do the group again, but have, you know, a different group this time, different content within the group. Next slide, please. So my 3 takeaway messages and actions. Nature is good for our mental well-being, and we should all spend more time connecting with nature. Nature is good for our clients' mental well-being, and we should do what we can to facilitate their connection with nature. And that local nature spots are essential to mental well-being, and we should also do what we can to keep those thriving, for example, joining our local community garden. And our next slide. So that's just my contact details, and that's a picture of me in the woods that are just behind the community garden where we held the group. Thank you.
That's absolutely amazing, Tammy. I think, you know, so often we forget there's a lot of the care that we give when we're in healthcare settings that is delivered inside. It's in buildings, whether it's in buildings, hospitals, clinics, it's in the home. But I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that perhaps we did lose along the way is those spaces, the gardens that we can take people to. I know myself, I think my plants grow so that I stop talking to them. But I think, you know, that time that you have actually just connecting, getting out there is so important. And the skills that you're teaching along the way as well, because there's so many benefits that can be picked up from this. And huge credit to you for the fundraising. I think that speaks so much for health professionals, for the care that we give, that you didn't get the funding, but hey, that's not going to stop us, and to go out and do that, I think that is really good. Just amazing, and really looking forward to seeing more of this. Hopefully we'll get more of these green spaces that people can use. We've got one hand there raised, and it's Jason. Jason, would you like to come in? Or it might have been a clap. Was it a clap? I'm not very good at picking them up. Could have been applause. Okay. I think, Kate, we can move to questions now, can't we? I'm going to Kate so I don't do this wrong. Is that all right? So I'm going to throw it open to anybody now. Any questions, please say. I think we've stunned everybody. I think everybody's sitting there with so much to think about. We've got so much there to take home from this. It's been an absolutely amazing session. Charlotte, if you're going to suggest we climb a mountain on our next team day, I'm going to press mute on you.
I've already done that. You said you wouldn't be able to get the business case through. No, I was just looking at the chat, and there's been loads of comments and some links in there. So fantastic presentations from everybody. We had a question, I think, which somebody's answered on behalf of Susie, about writing up her pie and porridge project as well. So there's some ideas to reach out. If you've got any ideas of where they can publish that, that would be really helpful. And then Shabana kindly popped in a question about the South Asian community who don't eat beef and pork. So food is important for them, particularly in terms of recovery, and what the plans are for ethnic minority populations as they increase in our areas, and how that might work. So I think there's some really good work going. So Susan replied that there's a World Food Menu. So if anyone's got any other things that they're doing in that space, that'd be good to hear.
Fantastic. Great summing up there, Charlotte. That's marvellous. So I'm going to hand back now to Kate, because I think we get our take-home messages. Do we, Kate?
Well remembered, Kay. I forgot to share them. Yeah, well, I'll pop them up now, but we'll be collating all of these into a summary and sharing them. Wi-Fi in the office is never what you want it to be, is it? But we've also got tomorrow. I don't know if it's in the right there, is it? So tomorrow is our final day, and we have theme is leadership. Does that work? Yeah. So we've got tomorrow, which the theme is leadership. So we've got some, take-home messages today that I wrote up, and it's all about one of my favourite phrases in sustainability is "Don't let perfection get in the way of progress." We know that calculating carbon emissions is really complicated, and CO2e doesn't really mean anything to anyone when we're trying to comprehend it. So just crack on is my take-home message for a lot of these projects. I think Pete gets right about being curious quite well, and then the embrace frugal innovations. So think about what we can do and how we can do more with less. So tomorrow is the final day of the week, and we have clinical leadership as the theme, and then we've got the award ceremony. So it's going to be a really good session, and it runs from 1 till 2:30 tomorrow.
For anybody who wants to wear formal dress, feel free.
Absolutely. And a green hat.
And a green hat. Thank you very much then, everyone. We'll say cheerio.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a nice afternoon.
I think that went really well. You're on mute.